The microphone hummed. Harlan Voss adjusted his cufflinks, gold, monogrammed, and smiled at the auditorium the way men like him always smiled at rooms they owned. After careful administrative review, he said, his voice smooth and unhurried, Entry 7 Alpha has been withdrawn due to eligibility concerns. We thank all participants for their outstanding contributions. Polite applause moved through the room like a wave that didn't know what it was clapping for. In the third row, Marcus Sims sat very still. He was 16 years old and wearing a blazer that belonged to his neighbor's son, navy blue, slightly too wide across the shoulders, the sleeves hitting. The applause faded. A girl near the front received a certificate. Someone took a photograph. The flash popped white against the gymnasium walls. Marcus didn't move. Dot didn't move. Then, slowly, without looking at him, her hand found his on the armrest between them. Her fingers closed around his. She didn't squeeze. She just held on. He stared straight ahead at the stage, at Harlan Voss already shaking the winner's hand, already laughing at something, already done with the moment he had just quietly destroyed. And Marcus's jaw worked once, then stopped. The gym smelled like floor wax and folding chairs and the particular staleness of a room used for assemblies, and nothing else. A little girl 2 rows ahead whispered something to her mother. Somewhere near the back, a door opened and closed on a hinge that needed oil. Neither of them said a word. That was the moment. That was what it looked like. Not a scene, not a confrontation, not the kind of injustice that announces itself. Just a woman in a church dress and a boy in a borrowed blazer, sitting with their hands joined while the room moved on around them. But that moment didn't come from nowhere. To understand what happened in that auditorium, you have to go back 11 years, to a woman who learned that invisible people see everything, who kept a notebook in her locker not out of suspicion, but out of habit, who raised a boy to be extraordinary in a world that was still deciding whether it wanted to notice. The story starts long before that gymnasium. It starts at 5:47 in the morning, on a bus that smelled like diesel and someone else's coffee, with a worn blue cooler on a woman's lap and a photograph tucked inside a metal locker. A boy's face, smiling, age 9, his front tooth just gone. It starts there. Before we get back to that auditorium, tell us where in the world you're watching from. Drop it in the comments right now. And subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you will not want to miss. The 5:47 a.m. bus ran whether or not it was raining, and in 11 years, Dorothea Sims had never missed it. The fun is just beginning. Tell us what city you're from in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe. The tension is rising. Who's watching from where? Like and subscribe to the channel. More to come. Tell us in the comments who's from which country, and give us a like and subscribe. The plot thickens. Let's check our geography. Tell us where you are now, give the video a thumbs up, and subscribe. We're just warming up. Tell us where you're watching from. Give the video a like and hit the subscribe button. The climax is near. Share where you're from, like, and be sure to subscribe. Events are unfolding rapidly. Write your city in the chat, give it a like, and subscribe so you don't get lost. The juiciest part is yet to come. Let's get started. Get to know each other. Where are you from? Like and subscribe right now. The suspense is building. Tell us where you're watching this episode from, and reward us with a like and a subscribe. The excitement is running high. Tell us what city you're from now. Give us a big like and subscribe to the channel. She sat in the second seat from the front, her worn blue cooler balanced on her knees, her coat buttoned to the collar against the November cold. The bus smelled like wet umbrellas and the faint ghost of someone's fast food from the night before. She didn't mind. She had learned a long time ago that minding things you couldn't change was just another way of being tired. Hargrove Preparatory Academy appeared at 6:04 a.m. through the bus window, all red brick and white columns, the kind of building that expected to be looked at. Dot didn't look at it anymore. She went in through the side entrance, the one near the loading dock, and hung her coat on the hook inside the supply closet that served as her base of operations. Her locker was the third one from the left. Inside, a spare pair of rubber gloves, a small bottle of ibuprofen, and taped to the inside of the door, a photograph of Marcus at age 9, his front tooth missing, squinting into the sun like it had personally offended him. She touched the corner of the photo the way she always did. Then she got to work. The school at 6 a.m. had its own particular smell, industrial floor cleaner and old radiator heat, and something like chalk dust that had soaked into the walls over decades and simply never left. Dot moved through the east corridor with her cart, the wheels squeaking on the left side in a rhythm she'd stopped noticing 2 years ago. Morning, Dot. Renata Okafor, the art teacher, appeared around the corner carrying a canvas tote and a travel mug that had seen better days. She was 29 and always early, and one of maybe 4 people at Hargrove who said Dot's name like it mattered. Dot kept moving. Renata looked down. Quote Fatfeo. In the cafeteria, Beverly from the kitchen had already set aside a paper cup of coffee. Black, 2 sugars, the way Dot took it. She left it on the corner of the counter without being asked. Had done it every morning for 6 years. Beverly called from behind the serving window. Dot said. That was the full extent of most of her mornings. Cart, corridor, coffee. The occasional nod from a teacher who was running late. The more occasional non-acknowledgement from Harlan Voss, who passed through the east corridor every Tuesday and Thursday on his way to the boardroom, his shoes making sharp sounds on the floor Dot had just cleaned, his eyes moving through her like she was part of the architecture. She had learned to make herself small in his presence, not out of fear, out of the particular economy of a woman who knew which battles cost more than they were worth. She was saving up. At home, Marcus was still asleep. He coded until midnight most nights, the blue light of his monitors bleeding under his bedroom door, and Dot left him to it. He was 16 and brilliant, and grieving in the quiet way that boys grieve when they don't have words for it yet. She always left a plate covered in foil on the stove. He always ate it before she got home. Marcus submitted the project on a Tuesday, just after midnight, when the apartment was quiet and Dot was already asleep. He sat at his desk, a folding table, really, pushed against the wall of his bedroom, with 3 monitors arranged in a half circle, all connected to a single refurbished laptop through a web of cables he'd soldered himself over the summer. The blue light made his face look older than 16. He read the submission form one more time, typed in the competition name, the Hargrove Annual Technology Prize, and hit enter before he could talk himself out of it. He didn't tell Dot. He wanted to surprise her. The entry was logged under a student ID number, anonymous until the judging panel requested identification. The project itself was a predictive learning algorithm. Marcus had built it to help students identify gaps in their own study patterns. He'd explained it to Dot once using basketball. She had nodded slowly and said, he'd thought about that for a long time afterward. The judges saw it on Wednesday morning. By Wednesday afternoon, the room where they met, a narrow conference room on the 2nd floor with a window that overlooked the parking lot, had gone very quiet. Who submitted this? Asked the panel chair, a woman named Dr. Ellison, leaning toward her screen. Entry 7 Alpha. Patrick Osei, the competition director, checked his clipboard. He was 31, organized, and had run the prize for 3 years without incident. Anonymous until verification. Get the verification, Dr. Ellison said. Today. Patrick sent the request that afternoon. The response came back within the hour. Marcus Sims, age 16, enrolled at Jefferson Park High School. Home address listed. Guardian, Dorothea Sims, custodial staff, Hargrove Preparatory Academy. Patrick read it twice. Then he walked it down the hall. Harlan Voss's office sat at the end of the administrative wing, behind a door that was always slightly ajar. Not because Voss was approachable, but because he liked to hear things. The office smelled like leather, and the particular brand of wood polish used only on furniture that cost more than most people's monthly rent. A window behind his desk looked out over the school's front lawn, the white columns, the circular drive where black cars idled every afternoon at pickup. Patrick set the verification sheet on the desk. Voss read it. His expression didn't change. He set it down and picked up his coffee cup. "She works here," he said. Her grandson submitted the entry, yes. "And he attends—" Voss glanced at the sheet. "Jefferson Park." "That's right." Voss was quiet for a moment. Outside, a groundskeeper was raking leaves near the front gate, the sound of it just barely audible through the glass. "Pull the eligibility criteria," Voss said finally. "The full document." "The rules don't specify—" "Pull the document, Patrick." Patrick picked up his clipboard. He didn't say anything else. He walked back down the hall, and behind him, he heard Voss lift his phone from the receiver. The leaves kept scraping against the pavement outside, dry and precise, and going nowhere. The disqualification notice arrived in Marcus's email on a Thursday evening at 6:22 p.m. Dot was at the stove. Chicken and rice, the Thursday version, with bay leaves she added because her mother had, and her mother's mother before that. The smell of it filled the small kitchen, warm and familiar, the kind of smell that was supposed to mean everything was fine. Marcus came in from his room holding his phone. He didn't say anything at first. He just stood in the doorway in his socks, the cracked screen casting a faint glow against his face. "Grandma." She turned. His expression stopped her hand on the spoon. "What happened?" He held out the phone. She took it, read the subject line, Hargrove Technology Prize, Entry 7-Alpha, Administrative Notice, and read the body of the email once. Then she read it again. "After review, your submission has been found ineligible under competition guidelines. This decision is final. We thank you for your participation." That was all. No specific clause, no explanation, no name signed at the bottom, just the competition's official letterhead, clean and impersonal as a form rejection. Dot set the phone down on the counter. She turned back to the stove and moved the pot off the burner. She did it carefully, the way she did most things. Quote 26, quote, she asked, quote 27, quote. Marcus looked at his socks. Quote 28. The kitchen was quiet except for the tick of the burner cooling down. Quote to 29, she said. He sat. She served the rice and chicken onto 2 plates, set them on the table, and sat across from him. She picked up her fork. Put it down. Quote 30, quote she said. Quote 31, quote 32, quote 33. Quote, she was quiet for a moment. Outside, a car passed on the street below, its headlights sweeping briefly across the kitchen ceiling. Underscore, quote, 34, she said. Marcus pulled them up on his phone and slid it across the table. Dot read them slowly, her finger moving along the screen. The rules were 4 paragraphs long. They specified grade level, 9th through 12th. They specified the submission format. They specified the deadline. They said nothing about which school a student had to attend. She slid the phone back. Quote 35, quote she said. Quote 36, quote 37. Quote, he ate. She barely touched hers. Her eyes moved to the window, to the dark street below, and stayed there while Marcus worked through his plate in silence. After dinner, she went to her bedroom and came back with a small spiral notebook, green cover, the kind sold in packs of 3 at the dollar store. She'd carried one like it for years. Dates, times, small observations. Not because she'd ever planned to use them, just because she'd learned that the world had a way of asking you, later, what exactly you remembered. She opened to a fresh page, wrote the date, wrote the time the email arrived, wrote, "No clause specified, no signatory, submitted Tuesday." Notice Thursday. She underlined "no clause specified." Then she picked up her pen again and wrote one more word. Why? Patrick Ossie called on a Friday night at 9:47 p.m. Dot was at the kitchen table with her notebook open and the original competition rules printed out. She'd gone to the library that morning to use the printer, paid 30 cents a page. She'd been cross-referencing for 2 hours. When her phone buzzed, she didn't recognize the number. She answered anyway. Quote, 38. Quote, a pause. Rain against the window. Quote, 39. Quote. She didn't say anything. She picked up her pen. "I signed the disqualification notice," he said. "I need you to know that Another pause. "I shouldn't have." "On what basis was my grandson disqualified?" "That's why I'm calling." His voice dropped slightly, the way voices do when someone is sitting in a parked car in the dark. "The clause they used isn't in the official rules. It was added in an internal memo, 3 days after Marcus submitted." Dot wrote the date, wrote, "Internal memo, retroactive." "Who wrote the memo?" Silence. "Mr. Ossie." "It came from above my position," he said carefully. She understood exactly what he wasn't saying. Quote 49, she asked. A long pause. Rain. A car passing somewhere near wherever he was sitting. Quote 50, quote, he said. Quote 51, quote. She thanked him, ended the call, and sat for a moment with her hand flat on the notebook. Then she picked up her pen and wrote one more name, Gerald Marsh. Gerald was 71 years old and attended the same church Dot had gone to for 9 years. He had retired from civil rights law 6 years ago, or so he said. He still kept files. He still kept hours. He answered his phone on the second ring even on a Saturday morning, which was when Dot called him next. Quote 52, quote, he said. Quote 53, quote, she didn't. When she finished, he was quiet for a moment. She could hear the sound of pages turning. He still used legal pads, yellow, the old kind. The retroactive memo is the key, Gerald said. That's not an oversight. That's a decision. Can we do something with it? We can do quite a lot with it. He set his pen down. I'll need Patrick's written statement. I'll need the original submission records. And I'll need you to keep your notebook exactly as it is. Don't add anything. Don't remove anything. It's been kept the same way for 11 years, she said. Gerald made a sound that was almost a laugh. I know. That's why I'm taking the case. Meanwhile, Renata Okafor had not been sleeping well. She sat in her classroom on Saturday afternoon. She often came in on weekends, surrounded by the smell of acrylic paint and turpentine and the particular quiet of a school building emptied of children, and pulled up the judging panel's internal notes on her laptop. She had been on the panel. She had seen entry 7 alpha before it disappeared. She read her own notes from that session. Exceptional. Most sophisticated submission in 3 years of judging. Recommend for first prize. She read the date she'd written them. 2 days before the disqualification memo existed. She closed her laptop, opened it again. Then she found Dot's number in the staff directory and typed a message. I think we need to talk. The principal's name was Richard Holt, and he had a way of delivering difficult messages that made them sound like kindness. His office smelled like fresh coffee and the cedar wood of his bookshelves, lined with volumes that looked read but probably weren't. He asked Dot to sit down on a Monday morning, 11 days after the disqualification notice. He poured her a coffee without asking how she took it. Black, which happened to be correct, though she doubted he knew that. Quote, 61. He folded his hands on the desk. Quote, 62. She held the coffee cup with both hands and said nothing. Quote, 63. He paused, choosing words the way a man picks his way across wet pavement. Quote, 64. Quote, 65, she said. Quote, 66. She looked at him steadily. Quote, 67. Quote, 68. He smiled carefully. Quote, in 69. The drop ceiling above his desk had one tile slightly askew. She'd reported it twice. It was still askew. She noted that the way she noted everything. I understand, she said. I don't want any complications either. He nodded, visibly relieved. Good. That's good. She set down the coffee cup, thanked him for his time, and walked back to the east corridor. Her cart was where she'd left it, wheels slightly turned, the squeaking one on the left. She pushed it to the supply closet, went inside, and closed the door. Then she took her phone from her pocket and stopped the recording. She had pressed record in the elevator on the way up. Habit. The same habit that had filled 4 green notebooks over 11 years. She listened to 30 seconds of it, his voice, careful and kind, every word a warning wrapped in concern. And then she sent the audio file to Gerald's email with a single line of text, for the record. Gerald called her back in 4 minutes. He didn't say anything explicit, she said. He didn't need to. Gerald's voice was dry and precise. Underscore, underscore, quote underscore 75, underscore, underscore. That same afternoon, Marcus was at his desk pulling together something he hadn't told Dot about yet. He'd been building a digital archive, screenshots of the email chain, timestamps, the original submission portal with its confirmation number still active, cached versions of the competition rules page from before and after. A quiet edit had been made to the website sometime on Wednesday of the previous week. Before and after. 2 different documents. The same URL. He printed both versions on the school library printer, 23 cents a page, paid from the emergency $5. Dot kept folded in the kitchen drawer. He held them side by side under the fluorescent library light. The new version had 4 additional lines in section 3. Lines that hadn't existed when he submitted. His hands were very still. His face was very still. He took out his phone and photographed both pages. Then he texted Dot. I found something. Come home early if you can. Gerald spread everything across his dining room table on a Tuesday evening. Printed emails, Marcus's 2 website screenshots side by side, Patrick's written statement, Renata's judging notes with her handwritten date in the corner, and 4 pages of Dot's green notebook, photocopied exactly as they were. The table smelled like old paper and the lamb stew his wife had left warming on the stove. He stood over it with his reading glasses pushed up on his forehead, moving from document to document the way he had moved through evidence for 40 years. This is enough, Marcus said from across the table. He was still in his school hoodie, the one that smelled like the fabric softener Dot bought in bulk, the sleeves pulled over his hands. It's more than enough, Gerald said. It's everything. Dot sat at the end of the table with her hands folded and watched Gerald work. The website edit is the piece that matters most, Gerald said, tapping Marcus's printouts. Dot asked. He looked at her over his glasses. Quote, 83, quote, 84, quote, 85. Marcus looked up. Quote, 86, quote, 87. Gerald said simply. Quote, 88. Quote, Renata came by at 7 o'clock, still carrying the canvas tote she brought everywhere, this time with a folder tucked under her arm. She set it on the table without ceremony. "My full judging notes," she said. "Every entry I reviewed. Scores, comments, dates." She pointed to the top page. "Entry 7 Alpha is on page 2. I wrote those notes the day I reviewed it, before any memo existed." She looked at Gerald. "I'll testify. Whatever you need." Gerald opened the folder, read for 30 seconds, closed it. "Thank you," he said, and the way he said it made clear he meant it as something larger than politeness. After Renata left, Dot walked to the window while Gerald made notes. The street outside was quiet, a dog barking somewhere 2 blocks over, a porch light coming on across the way. She thought about the photograph in her locker. Marcus at 9, squinting into the sun. She thought about his mother, about the last year when things had gotten hard in ways that couldn't be fixed, and about how Marcus had been 8 years old and hadn't understood and had asked once, very quietly, "Is Mama going to be okay?" Dot had told him the truth as gently as she knew how. She had been doing that ever since, telling the truth as gently as she knew how, and then getting up the next morning and going to work. "Dot." Gerald's voice was quiet. Quote, 95. Quote, she turned from the window. Quote 96, she said. He picked up his pen. The hearing was scheduled for a Thursday. The night before, Dot couldn't sleep. She lay in the dark with the ceiling above her, and the sound of Marcus's keyboard from down the hall, still at it past midnight, the soft clicking of keys like rain on a window. She didn't tell him to stop. The sound was company. At 1 a.m., she got up, put on her robe, and went to the kitchen. She made tea she didn't drink and sat at the table where the green notebook lay closed, everything documented, everything in order. Gerald had called that afternoon to go over the sequence one final time. Quote, 97, quote, he'd said. Keep it simple and specific. You don't need to argue. The documents argue. What about Voss? He'll be there. He'll be composed. Men like that are always composed until they aren't. And if the board sides with him? Gerald had been quiet for just a moment. Then we go to the next level. But Dot, I've read everything. I've been doing this 40 years. They're not going to side with him. She had believed him. She still believed him. But belief and sleep were different things. At 2 a.m., Marcus appeared in the kitchen doorway in his socks, his hoodie, his eyes tired but alert. He looked at her at the table and didn't ask why she was up. He just sat down across from her. They stayed like that for a moment, the kitchen quiet around them, the refrigerator humming its low, constant note. Quote 103, he asked. Dot wrapped both hands around her mug, thought about it honestly, not the polite answer, the real one. Underscore, underscore, quote underscore 104 underscore underscore, she said. Underscore, underscore, quote underscore 105 underscore underscore. Marcus nodded slowly. He pulled at a loose thread on his sleeve. Underscore, underscore, quote, underscore 106, underscore, underscore, he said. Underscore, underscore, quote, underscore 107, underscore, underscore. Dot looked at him across the table. His face in the low kitchen light, the shape of his jaw, the way he held his shoulders, was so much like his mother's that it sometimes stopped her mid-breath. She would say you built something real, Dot said, and that nobody gets to take that. He was quiet. Then, do you think she'd be proud? Marcus. Dot set down her mug. She has been proud since the day you were born. He looked at the table, nodded once, the way he did when he was keeping something in. They sat together until almost 3, not talking much, just present in the warm kitchen smell of old wood and tea and the fabric softener that clung to everything they owned. Then Marcus went back to his room and the clicking of keys resumed, softer now, and Dot sat alone for another few minutes. She opened the green notebook to the last written page, read it through once, closed it. She set out her good church dress on the chair by the door, laid her shoes beneath it, low heels, black, polished twice already, set her phone on the charger. Then she went back to bed. She didn't sleep much, but she was ready. The boardroom held 22 chairs and smelled like carpet cleaner and old coffee from a machine in the corner that no one had turned off. By the time the session opened at 10 a.m., every chair was filled. Dot sat at the left table with Gerald beside her, his yellow legal pad squared in front of him. Marcus sat one row back, next to Renata. Patrick Osei sat at the end of the row, his hands flat on his knees. 6 community members from the district, people Gerald had called, people who had driven 2 hours on a Thursday morning, sat in the chairs along the wall. Harlan Voss sat at the right table with the school's attorney. He wore a charcoal suit and the particular expression of a man who had already decided how the day would end. Gerald presented the evidence in order, quietly, methodically. The original competition rules, no school enrollment restriction, the internal memo, dated 3 days after Marcus's submission. The website screenshots, before and after, same URL, different text. He laid each document on the table and named it and moved to the next. Voss's attorney made 2 objections. Gerald answered both in 1 sentence each. Then Patrick stood. "I directed the disqualification," he said. His voice was steady, but his jaw was tight. "I was instructed to." The instruction came from Mr. Voss directly, by phone, before any formal review had taken place. He paused. "I should have refused. I didn't. I'm correcting that now." The room was very quiet. Voss leaned toward his attorney and said something low. His attorney wrote a note. Voss looked at the note and looked up, and his expression had shifted, just slightly, just enough. Renata went next. She read her judging notes aloud, date and all. Then Gerald called his 2 independent technology reviewers who had evaluated Marcus's project the previous week and submitted written assessments. Gerald read 1 line from each report into the record. Quote, 116. Quote. He set the paper down. Quote, 117, quote, Gerald said. Quote, 118, quote. Then he turned to face the room. Quote, 119, quote, he said. Quote, 120, quote. Voss straightened in his chair. Gerald said simply. Silence, Gerald said again, not loudly, just precisely. Voss's hand found the back of his chair and gripped it. His attorney put a hand on his arm. The board chair called for a closed deliberation. 12 minutes later, they returned. The vote was 6-2. Marcus exhaled. 1 long breath, like something he'd been holding for 3 weeks. Renata pressed her hand over her mouth. Patrick closed his eyes. Dot sat with her hands folded on the table and her face composed and still, the way it had been in the auditorium, the way it had been in the principal's office, the way it had been every morning for 11 years. Only her eyes were different now. The scholarship letter arrived on a Friday. $50,000, confirmed in writing, on official Hargrove letterhead with the new competition director's signature, Patrick Osei, who had been appointed acting director the week after the hearing. Marcus read it, standing in the kitchen in his socks. He read it twice. Then he set it on the table and went to find Dot. She was in her bedroom, still in her work clothes, sitting on the edge of the bed with her shoes off. She looked up when he appeared in the doorway. He didn't say anything, he just held out the letter. She took it, read it, folded it once, carefully, along its original crease, held it in both hands. Grandma. I know, she said. "We did it." She looked at him. This boy, 16 years old, brilliant and patient, and still grieving and still standing. And her eyes went bright for just a moment before she pressed her lips together and nodded. "Your mother would have framed this," she said. "She would have put it on every wall in the apartment." Marcus laughed. It came out a little uneven. "Every wall," he agreed. 6 months later, the changes were quiet but permanent. Patrick Osei rewrote the competition's eligibility rules, the real ones, published and public, with no room for internal memos. He opened the prize to students from all 12 schools in the district and added a second scholarship for the following year, funded by 3 board members who had voted in Dot's favor and wanted it on record that they had. Renata launched a technology outreach program connecting Hargrove's computer lab to 3 public schools nearby. On Tuesday afternoons, the lab filled with students who had never been inside the building before, their sneakers squeaking on the same floors Dot mopped every morning, their voices bouncing off the same high ceilings. Quote, 131. Quote, one of them asked Renata on the first day. Quote, 132, quote, she said. Gerald filed the formal record with the State Oversight Board, ensuring it could not be quietly archived. He framed his copy of the hearing outcome and put it on the wall beside his other cases, 40 years of them, each one a name, a date, a decision that someone had tried to make disappear. Harlan Voss resigned from the board 2 months after the hearing, citing personal reasons. The cedar and leather office was repainted. Someone put a plant in the window. On a Monday morning in March, Dot rode the 5:47 bus and walked in through the side entrance and hung her coat on its hook. The school smelled the same: industrial cleaner, old radiator heat, chalk dust in the walls. Some things don't change. She didn't need them to. 3 teachers said good morning in the East Corridor. The principal stopped her near the main office, genuinely, without the careful voice, and said simply, ___, quote, _133, ___. On the bulletin board outside the main office, someone had pinned a printed copy of Marcus's project abstract. Beside it, in small handwriting on an index card, "This school is better because of this family." Dot read it once. Then she went to her locker and opened it. She took out the scholarship letter. She'd been carrying it folded in her coat pocket for 6 months and pinned it next to Marcus's photograph. She closed the locker. She picked up her mop. She went to work. Some people change the world loudly. Dot Sims did it by showing up. If this story moved you, hit the like button and subscribe. There are thousands of stories like this one waiting to be told. And tell us in the comments, what would you have done in her place? On your screen